Hey, good evening. This is Jack, and this is a mini live session. Welcome if you are joining us live, and also welcome if you're joining here after the event. I appreciate your presence. I wanted to come on, as you may know, this is the final call, the closing of the doors on my special coaching offer. And so I thought I'd just come on and see if there's anyone who's hanging about who has questions that I may be able to help with. We're streaming at the moment to YouTube and to Facebook. So hey to both those platforms. If you're here live, say hola. Let me know that you're here. Tell me where you're tuning in from. Let me know how you're doing. And let me know if you have any questions. I'm also willing to take some other questions. Doesn't have to relate to coaching. If you've got something that you want my attention on. Audra, hi, how's it going? Welcome. I was reading your comment just earlier. Thank you for your participation on this channel. There's a few more of you joining now. So yeah, say hi, let me know that you are here. I'm just going to go and post this link here if you are thinking about this or if you're still on the fence. We still have the coupon code running here for a standard coaching package, 50% off. So you can just click that link, use the coupon code 50, and that will take you straight to your special offer. A few more people joining us. Angie, hola, how's it going? Welcome. Audra's in Geneseo, Illinois. All right, on. I drove through Illinois last month. I'm not sure how close that is to the interstate. I guess is it 80 or 70? Maybe it's both. Aloha. I like this. We've started all the languages here. Aloha from Kansas. Hey, Jackie, welcome. And Felicia, hello. Yeah, welcome. So hit me. Let me know if you've got any questions. It's been quite an intense little period of work here, putting this promo together, but I thank all of you that have considered coaching, those of you that have stepped into coaching. I'm excited to be getting going. I think it's going to be a great start to the year, and I'm kind of up for 2020. You know, sometimes there's years that close out where you're kind of like, oh, it feels like it's kind of closing out too soon. Kind of feel up for 2020. So, hey, Lisa, coming in from Buffalo, New York, with a, what is that? Is that a mountain goat? I have been to Buffalo, New York. I went to Buffalo, New York last year, I guess at the same time as doing like Niagara Falls. Claire, hello from Scarborough. Welcome. I know where that is, although it's not a place I've been to. Quad Cities, Iowa, Illinois border. Okay, I live 50 minutes from John Deere headquarters. That made my brother happy. When we used to play with tractors as kids, we had this, it was called Britain's was the brand, Britain's farm machinery. We would set it all up all over the house, much I think to the dismay of my parents, because we didn't have a very big house and I was one of four. But yeah, we had some John Deere, just the toy version, John Deere's Massey Ferguson's basically. Wilma, hello from Bonn, Germany. Welcome. Oh yeah, happy birthday, Claire. It's your birthday. That's awesome. Hope it's been good. What about St. Louis? Yeah, I've been to St. Louis. Or as I probably have incorrectly called it. Yeah, I've been to San Luis. Yeah, I actually came through St. Louis last year on a road trip back to Colorado, and I was actually really happy to discover it. Yeah, it seemed like a really cool place, and I have my national parks pass, so I got to go up the archway and check out the view from the top. And actually, the whole apparatus that takes us, for those of you who don't know, there's a huge metal archway, and by huge I mean, you know, sort of like up there with comparisons, like with, I don't think it's quite as tall as this, but sort of Eiffel Tower and those kind of things. But it's got a very unique mechanism that's a combination of like an elevator and a chair lift, ski lift that kind of gets you in the inside of this archway to some little windows at the top. Yeah, common mistake. Yeah, that's probably the problem with knowing enough French to be dangerous. Oh wow, 2:33 in the morning. I didn't think of that. Yeah, gosh. Well, I hope it's not too cold. My dad has been telling me it's been cold in England recently. He said earlier, he said, you wouldn't want to be in England right now. And I reminded him that when I was in England in summer, I was actually saying the same thing. So, yeah. All right. Who's got any questions here? Has anyone got any questions about coaching or a situation, something that's going on? Are any of you on the fence about coaching and want to be pushed and pulled one way or the other? Let me know. I'm also just curious how people are doing. How are you feeling post Thanksgiving, going into December? MQ, hi from Boston. Right on. That's actually somewhere that I am looking forward to going to, because I've only ever driven through Boston, but not had the opportunity to stop, other than, I guess, briefly in, I guess, Cambridge. Yeah. So if you're just joining us, this is an impromptu live. We're just hanging out, inviting people to share where they're tuning in from. Let me know if you have a question. Generally, once the questions start to get going, if they do, I will go at them in order. So the sooner you get your question in, the better. Also, let me know if I'm really doing a big push on this month. So if there's anything else that you want from me, let me know. If there's anything that you're like, oh, I would, I don't want to do coaching, but I want to do this. Had someone suggest that they would love me to put like an afternoon tea package together, 2 hours of coaching and afternoon tea. So if that's of interest and you can get to the East Coast, let me know. It's cold here already. Yeah, I bet that was one of my concerns whenever anyone had suggested that as a place to live. One of the things that keeps me from coaching improving is knowing that I'll need to let go of a certain person in my life. Is it possible that coaching would be easier? Yeah, sure. Partly because that takes an incredible amount of strength and knowing and self-discipline. And, I even know from personal experience that sort of feeling of, this isn't good for me. And yet, like the moth drawn to the flame, here I am again, showing up for this connection, probably disrupted in my nervous system, probably self-critically beating myself up because part of me knows that I shouldn't be doing this. And yet there's an arresting quality of attraction or connection or fear of the loss of connection. So yeah, absolutely, having me in your corner would be helpful with that, because I've helped people and I've had my own experiences of that. And I can also do a lot to keep the focus back on you and your development, and helping you decide when those feelings come up in advance, what you're actually going to do, what you're going to turn to, or even that you might, if you're really, really struggling, just reach out to me as opposed to reaching out to this person that's not in your favor. And then also we can put together your little team of people that are going to be on your side to help you wean yourself off this, so that it's not just all relying on your self-discipline. Because, you'll know this with other domains of your life. It's hard to be fully self-disciplined all the time, right? Sometimes you're good, and then sometimes you're tired and you're ill, and then you don't want to eat the kale salad, right? You want the ice cream. So this is that, but many times harder, because it's, our core wounds, it's attachment, it's bringing up relationship fantasies that have been activated that maybe also need to die and be grieved. So it's a lot, and particularly if you've been at it for a while, then it can also erode at your confidence and self-esteem in your ability to handle it, right? So yeah, it's not uncommon when I work with people one-on-one that one of the first things that we're doing is sort of dealing with something, right? Which could be no contact, it could be grieving, it could be letting go of someone. that there's almost like that's the immediate concern that we need to handle. And then in time, there's more space to do more of your own inner work, right? Which I actually think is what this is pointing to, because this is really about self-love and boundaries. And life is giving you a really, really gnarly situation in order to bring that so screamingly, painfully into your awareness. And sometimes we wish maybe life could do it less painfully, but it gets your attention, right? So this has your attention. So your highest development, which I'm going to bet is in this direction of self-love and boundaries, it's got your attention probably every hour of every day. So in the fullness of time, this could be the portal to your complete wakefulness. But there's going to be some work in that. But the sooner that you do it, and that you really do it, not just, the sort of yo-yo diet where you're going to try it, but then you go back, or you just try to no contact and you go back, because that's a lot of energy that sort of, it's like a hamster spinning its wheel, right? We're not really moving the game forward. So yeah, I know you a little bit as well. I'd love to support you in that. Let me know if that makes sense. And anyone else who's in a similar situation, feel free to chime in. What's your experience? Audra says, I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, visiting my boyfriend, 7-month long term. I get scared about the unknowns. Is there any advice about calming down the mind to not stick on that? I commute every 3 weeks. Yeah. Well, I'm a fan of having periodic conversations about what is happening here, and sometimes you can even take the sort of difficulty about raising that, where it's just like, well, look, first Sunday of the month, and I realize if you're doing every 3 weeks, that might not quite fit, but whatever would fit for you, to say, when we go for breakfast, or we do a thing that we do, we have a cup of coffee, we pour our glass of wine, or we go for a walk, that we're just going to have a check-in about where we're at and what's here and what are you feeling and what are you intending, just so it's like we're, in fancy speak, we're weaving shared reality. In layman speak, we're on the same page. So that can start to sort of normalize that conversation, so that you're not perhaps holding the impetus for it, or you're not bringing it up at a time when they think it's a bad time, so then that conversation doesn't really happen. So that's the structural piece. The best way to calm down the mind is to put the attention in another center, meaning your heart and your body. So, anything that supports you being more present, whether that's meditation, yoga, breathing practices, getting out in nature, being close to water, getting your hands immersed in something, building something, digging in the mud, gardening, origami, knitting, sewing, but anything that you can do mindfully, preparing food, walking slowly, where you really pay attention to each step. Any and all of that in your own life can just be a really good practice. Now, then if you could couple that with some 80-20, where you're really practicing not just with him, but in any situation, bringing more attention over here, so that becomes a little easier to do, that you can almost just flick that switch, rather than, spend a lot of time hanging out with someone and realize, oh my gosh, I was just completely over there, or worse than that, be completely over there and not even realize it, right? Which is where a lot of us are when we don't have attention on that. So yeah, another way of saying this is that your freedom is in cultivating your relationship with the unknown. Sometimes I think the mind wants to say, well, let's create more certainty. And yes, in some ways, we do need some certainty about, that you have a pair of socks to put on in the morning, or you have, some money to pay rent, or that, the floor is going to be stable and the ceiling's not going to give way. There's those sorts of things that if they're constantly not certain, it's really hard to relax our nervous systems. But the certainty about the unfolding, that's really where the spiritual freedom is. And anytime you're struggling with that, just also trying to remind yourself that this is the path. It might not be easy, but don't push it away. It's almost like the path is embracing it, and in the cultivation of your relationship with the unknown. All right, welcome if you just joined us. I'm taking a few questions here. I'm also talking to anyone that's on the fence about coaching, as we've got a couple hours to go of this special offer. If you scroll in the comments, you'll see the link that you can click, and you can use the coupon code 50 for 50% off. So let me know if you have any questions about that. Angie says, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Patricia, what if I can't seem to move forward with new dating partners after a breakup of 2 years? So, if I'm hearing that right, you're not fully over that relationship. So I'm curious if there's some work that could support you in that. If I were working with you, I'd probably want to give you an opportunity to get anything out that hasn't been gotten out about that, whether it's sadness or anger or anything you didn't get the opportunity to say, anything you did say that you regret saying, just kind of like a full catharsis. And I'm curious if there's anything that you're engaging in that's keeping that in place. So is there nostalgia? Are there any pictures? Are there places that you go that you guys still used to go to? Is there anything that you need to sort of clean up from the scene? Is there any way that you're still connected, or any kind of cords that need to be cut there? Have you given over the timeline of your healing? Kind of meaning that you've surrendered, well, I should already be healed, or that you sort of should know when this should be done. Maybe sometimes it does take months and years for something to fully heal. Or maybe there's ways that you could turn to that could support that process that you haven't prioritized or you've feared, understandably so, if that's the case. So, yeah, I'd definitely be interested in trying to help you with that if that's something you want to dive into. I'm interested in our programs, including one-to-one video conferences with you. So if you mean, just to get clear on because we have some namings are a little similar. So there's Relationship Ready, but Becoming the One, which we sometimes call BTO, just to distinguish it. And then there's my program, the Real Relating Program. So both of those are self-study. They don't include a live element. At some point, I may consider to do another live program, but it won't, I think, be for a bit here, because I've got my kind of coaching load full, or starting to fill up. But it's a great program, and I get a lot of good feedback about this. I think people find it's a very comprehensive program, and there's a through line to the curriculum. So let me know which one of those, if it was one of those, and if you've got any more questions about that. Thanks for reminding me more about presence. Thanks as always. I like that spiritual unfolding. Yeah, such a big part of the day. Such a big part of the game. Getting. We talk sometimes about the drift and the shift. That we're all going to drift from presence, and how quickly can you notice that and shift back. It's like an ongoing kind of recalibration. Jackie says, ciao, need my beauty rest. I'll watch mañana. You're blonde Florida girl living in the Midwest. Can't wait. Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in. I'm impressed. You're observing better bedtimes than I am. Should put my feelings first, says Claire. Or should I put my boyfriend's feelings first, or my feelings because he's ill? Well, I think as a good rule, getting really connected to and your own feelings is a really good starting point. To be close to yourself, to know what you are actually feeling, to feel it, not just think it. And what we don't want to do is be in a codependent orientation to another person, right? So that kind of codependency could be that it makes it hard for you to be feeling something that I don't want you to feel. There's a lot of freedom in actually allowing the people around you to be feeling what they're feeling, right? Including if that's difficult feelings, like maybe they're upset with you or disappointed with you, to kind of build your capacity to want people to be authentic with you about their feelings. Even if it impacts me, even if I hurt to know that you're impacted or you're hurt at our best, that's what we want to do for each other. You have a right to your impact and I have an availability for that impact, but I'm not solely responsible for it, and I'm not trying to kind of manage your feelings. So ideally we both get to feel our feelings, and I wouldn't think it's almost like a one over the other. I think it's more like a both and, both are important. But if you have a tendency to be over there with someone else, then staying connected to yourself is important. Now I can see how illness might be another variable in that. That might mean that he's a much lower capacity, so maybe his threshold for certain kinds of activity or even for frustration is more limited. So there may be times that you're kind of cutting him slack or something, but I don't think any of that is about disconnecting from what you're actually feeling. And you're more likely to be able to be with someone else if you're connected to what you're feeling. So basically all of you can be here. You're not having to discount or disconnect from yourself. So yeah. Let me just throw one up on the screen here. Hi, Jack. 4 months post breakup, and I still feel angry at my ex for suddenly leaving the relationship. He said I'm capable and I'll be okay. I felt abandoned because I'm capable. I'm hurt and angry still. Yeah. So it's when he says that you're capable and you'll be okay, does that how does that land with you? Is that him trying to be supportive, or is that kind of diminishing the impact that he's having on you from walking away? Yeah, so when relationships end suddenly, it can be really difficult, right? Because it's almost like we don't have this period of adjustment of what our optimal distance is. And so sometimes that can leave things in place because they've never almost had the chance to be said or heard. So I definitely would encourage you to be doing that with someone. If we were working together, I'd include that as part of what we're doing, to give you that opportunity to say what you need to say and feel what you need to feel. You have a right to be hurt and angry. This may not be how it feels, but just as a sort of an idea in case it's helpful. You are able to take care of yourself as an adult. And so the part of you that feels most abandoned is probably your little one, your inner child. Your inner child's feeling abandoned is a kind of life and death situation. As an adult, it's harder for us to be abandoned, because actually the sort of truest meaning of that is something that's more appropriate for a child. We can be left suddenly. So, none of that is to diminish any of the feelings of abandonment. It's just there might be a possibility for you to sort of reframe how you're experiencing that. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there maybe could have been a much more skillful way for this to have unfolded. And I'm sorry that wasn't available. I imagine you feel like the rug got pulled, kind of let down, hung out to dry. That's a difficult experience. And maybe the silver lining for you is that it forced some clarity. Like you didn't, 4 months is some time, but it's not a huge amount of time in the context of where relationships can go. So maybe, you dodged a bullet in the long run. If he's willing to just suddenly leave and not really hang around, because it can be right at any point for someone to leave a relationship, right? I think people have that right. And there can be a way of dealing with that is actually like, I'm going to stay around enough to make sure that I'm supporting you in this transition, right? And that bit doesn't seem like it was available here. So, yeah. You say, how do I process this? I can't wrap my mind around it as to why he would leave for that reason. So whenever someone gives you a reason for something like a breakup, I would hold it lightly. Partly because I don't know that we always have the awareness to discern exactly why we're doing something. So sometimes we have an emotional sense that something isn't right, and then we backfill it with some logic. So unless I'm misunderstanding this, if he's saying I'm leaving you because you're capable to be on your own, I mean, that, I don't know, that doesn't really make sense to me. Even if it might be true that you're capable of being on your own and being okay, I don't get that that's really a reason. So I would hold it lightly. And I don't even mean this, that guys are being sinister, like they know the real reason, but they just feed you some kind of line. Sometimes they may not actually know the real reason, or they may think they know the real reason, but it's still kind of like an approximation or a logicalization. Sometimes life is a little bit more mystery and intuitive, and who even knows sometimes why you're attracted to one person over another, right? So there's a part of you that wants to get that closure by knowing this was the reason, but there's a lot of freedom in not having to know, in just acknowledging this has ended, or it's broken up for now. That is what's happening. The sooner that I can drop out of the story and the narrative and just be with the experience, the feelings, the new reality, the better. So in some ways, the simpler, the better. And, he could give you a reason that is somehow satisfactory to you, but I'm just saying, that may or may not be the fullness of what's going on. He might have had an unconscious childhood wound activated and decided that he needed to run away. Now, is he able to really know what that is and articulate that clearly? I don't know. It might be that he has an investment strategy that is, I'm in until I'm not. And at some point he wasn't, and then he was quickly out, whereas you have a different investment strategy. There can be all sorts of things that are happening here. So I would deprioritize what he says to you and reprioritize yourself and your direct experience of what's actually happening, and turn towards that and whatever supports it, whether it's coaching, therapy, going to the spa, spending time in nature, getting lost in a really good book. Just, what is it that is supportive to you and your connection at this time? MQ, I like the idea of either the self-study programs, but also think the one-to-one live would be beneficial. So is there a way to video conference with you to determine what would be best? Well, so if you want to get in on this coaching round, as you probably know, time is of the essence. So we're gosh, I'm going to be up till midnight. We've got 2 hours to go. I probably will count down the clock. So if you're interested, the best thing to do is to shoot me a text or shoot me an email, and we can set that up here. Put my email in there, so that we can either just have a quick text exchange or just jump on a call. If you're not interested in the coaching, then time is a little less immediate of the essence. So we could do that, not necessarily in the next 2 hours, but at some point we can set that up. And I'm happy to consult what might be the best fit. Thanks for your interest. Yeah, so pop my email in there. Another question from Patricia. If I'm dealing with my grown daughter and her heartbreak from childhood issues, does that filter over into my dating process? Gosh, you tell me. What's your experience? I would probably just be slightly amateurishly conjecturing. I mean, it sounds like that your grown daughter's heartbreak is impacting you because you're bringing it up here. So I'm curious what connections you're making. And I'm curious what your true feelings are about this heartbreak from her childhood issues. How do you feel about that? Do you have acceptance? Is there a way you're trying to protect her from that? Or do you feel guilt? Or what's going on there? Give me a flavor. Rika, it feels that simply because I'm capable, he just excuses himself to be accountable for his errors, what he should be responsible for. Yeah. Well, that might be, if I were working with him, that might be his work, for a lot of us guys, that might be our work. I know personally there's been times when I could be better at just saying, yeah, I didn't do that great. Can I do a redo? A lot of that also comes down to what your apology languages are, so I'm generally more interested in, can we get back to where we were, in fancy speak, restitution, so if if you knock my picture off the wall, I mostly want you to take ownership of putting it back, and if it's broken, figuring out a way to fix it. I don't necessarily need you to say, I'm really, really, really sorry about that. I actually just kind of want it solved. For some people, they don't care so much about that. They actually care about the emotional conveyance of remorse. So we want to be careful that you're not subjectifying him into your style of apology. Or if someone were to be a good match for you in partnership, they might have or be able to learn your style of apology, and you could teach them and train them. That accountability is really important for you. And how would you know I'm accountable? Like, give me the 1 or 2 sentences example that would let me know that you find me accountable. Maybe it's just saying, I mucked up, I did wrong, and I'm sorry. But just realizing, a lot of people have different wiring around that and different upbringings. So I'd get curious about whoever's in front of you and what do they seem to value when it comes to apologies. Because that's probably it's not always true that the thing you default to doing is the thing that you want someone else to do, but I would say it's a pretty good start. All right. Good luck, Claire. Get some sleep. Thanks for being here. So Jules, hey, happy to find this when I couldn't sleep. Yeah, it's actually funny. I have, when I've had issues sleeping, and definitely it's been way more part of my life than I used to be one of those really enviable people who's like, oh, I'm going to bed. 5 minutes later, I'm asleep. And now it's morning and I had some good dreams. So yeah, I have sometimes thought, gosh, it's 2 a.m. Should I make use of this and be productive and kind of go and do a live stream? But I kind of also figured you might not want to see me when I'm kind of like yawning and bleary eyed. So we'll have to see. Anyway, you have a question. Just before I answer that, for those of you that have just joined us, a few more of you have come in. Thank you for being here live. We're live streaming to Facebook and YouTube at the moment, and it's coming into the 1 hour and 58 minutes to the deadline on this coaching special offer. So if you have any questions about that, or you're thinking about it, you're on the fence, let me know, and I'll just post the link here again, and you can use this coupon code. And just so you know what this is my standard coaching package. So it's 10 to 12 sessions of up to 75 minutes. And we'll do those sessions over 3 to 4 months. And we'll also have an audio WhatsApp thread that's running between us so that we can be connected between sessions. You can check in, I can check in with you, and we can deepen and further the learning. People seem to really value that part of the coaching. And it basically means you get me in your corner for those up to 4 months. And it also means if there's anything that I organize that's just for clients, that you'll get an invitation to that. Also, as a client, you get first dibs when I offer personal retreats, which is something that I am offering in 2022. That's the opportunity to spend immersive time with me, kind of like an intensive coaching retreat, one-on-one, where you would fly out. You would book accommodation for yourself, but we'll get together over 3 days and do some intensive work together. So if that's of interest, often coaching is the best way into that, because you'll be offered that first as a client. All right, let me know if you have any questions about that. The clock is ticking. Ordinarily, these are for starts in January, but in the standard package, if you want to start sooner than that, we can get something on the books in December, which is now just 2 hours away. All right. Jill says, haha, glad it's not just me who's making the most of a wait time. Yeah, totally. So the question was, I've recently reconnected with a guy from the past who I barely dated. I have strong feelings and I'm having trouble seeing it clearly. Advice? Well, so there's maybe two simple parts to this, right? There's like what you're feeling, and maybe you're kind of second guessing that because you're having strong feelings. Perhaps it's surprising to you. Makes total sense. Maybe something's sort of been activated. Maybe it's not just about this guy. Maybe it's kind of brought something online. The thing is, you've got the awareness to know that these strong feelings are happening. So that's awesome. And it is hard to see clearly when that's happening. You might just have to ride that out for a little bit. Maybe that might stabilize. Maybe the connection won't last for longer than a few more weeks, and that will be what it was. Maybe you'll still be hanging out in 3 months, and that will start to subside, and you start to see a little bit more clearly. So sometimes the question is just, do you want to go on the next date? That's my kind of 101 guide to authentic dating. Do you want to go on the next date? Let him invite you on the next date. If you're a yes, say yes. And don't build any castles in the sky. Don't get too ahead of yourself. Don't have to worry about if there's too much of a future. You might say, well, that's great, Jack, but I'm having such strong feelings. How can I not think about the future? Well, just in your sobriety, realize that strong feelings are different than this is a good choice of relationship person for me to be with. So any time that you can sort of talk yourself off that edge, I would. You can name it. Sometimes it's good just to reveal it. Like, I'm not making this mean anything, but this connection is provoking strong feelings in me. Just so you're not having to kind of like both experience that and now manage it and sort of pretend it's not there. That's going to take a lot of energy and probably be uncomfortable. So, there's probably not too much to know at this stage. You trust him to be, if he's into it, that he wants to keep kind of dating you, and just notice that. Is he showing a certain level of initiative? And probably, if it's bringing up a lot of strong feelings, I would also, not go for let's be seeing each other all the time. I would probably, put some structure in place so that you're more oriented to dates than like ongoing communication, because that's also a way of sort of regulating your feelings. And if you can, try and enjoy it. In some ways, it's great to have strong feelings. Like, it reminds us that we are deeply feeling people, and it kind of takes you out of the rational brain. Maya just sent email. Awesome. All right, I will just check that shortly. Diana, hello from Millersville, Pennsylvania. Welcome. And welcome to anyone else that's just joined us. We are live here, but also thanks if you're watching this after the event. I'm taking a few questions, and I'm inviting people to meet the special offer deadline of midnight Eastern time if they want to get involved in coaching. The link here is in the comments. So Nino says, in love with a married person that once is going to divorce, gone no contact. Is this the best way? Yeah, I think that could be the best way. I mean, obviously without knowing too much of the context. But I think what that does is it preserves the possibility that if there's something more meaningful to happen, it can happen once he or she has gone through divorce, or is far enough along in that process that it's definitely happening, it's substantively happening, there's an emotional separation that's really happened, and there's enough of a sort of physical, financial separation that is happening or is imminent. So good job. It's not common that I hear people saying that this is where they've gotten to. So I like hearing that. Patricia, I feel guilt and sorrow and devastated to see her react so angry. I'm trying to date, but lately it just seems like most guys are getting angry with me and quitting before we even meet. Okay. So this has me curious about your relationship with anger, because it seems like your daughter's angry and these guys are getting angry. And not always, but sometimes when you've got angry people around, it's because you're disconnected from your own anger. So it's this kind of holographic thing where it's actually an invitation for you to re-embrace and reclaim your anger. Then it's less problematic when people are angry around you. I mean, obviously, we all typically prefer, when people are kind and gentle, but anger is important and has its place. And if I'm pretty connected to mine, I might be a little less ruffled by yours, or at least we all have a right to our anger and realize that it's an important part of being a human being. So, that would be my line of curiosity with that. Particularly when you say guys are getting angry with you before you're even meeting. So that's interesting. So you're kind of having a little spat argument on a dating app. Is that, am I kind of picking that up right? Maybe it's to do with scheduling. Maybe you feel disrespected, or they're getting angry with you. So why would they be getting angry with you? Are you not saying yes to their dates? What's going on there? That has my curiosity. I know this is back to Jules. I know we both had strong feelings before, but circumstances were against us. I know he likes me and respects me, and I sense he is hesitant in case he hurts me. How can I get him to take the chance? Yeah, that is an interesting one, because relationships involve hurting one another. I don't say that just to sort of, I don't say it glibly. I just mean, if I'm going to be in a relationship with you in any way, there's a chance that we're going to hurt each other at times, right? We're going to trespass on values. We're going to say something that the other person doesn't like. We're going to get angry. We're going to have conflict. We're going to act out, all of those things. So if a guy says to you, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt you, I'm curious if that's proxy for deep down, I don't see this going somewhere, and that's why I'm afraid of hurting you. And I would invite you to ask him what's going on there. Like, does he see a possible future? He doesn't have to know that he wants to be in this committed thing, but are we kind of moving in that direction? Do you see it? Because I think guys somewhat early have a sense of whether you're in the realm of possibility or not. And it can be difficult as a guy if you've got a level of attraction. So there is a connection here, whether it's, physical, intellectual, emotional. If we've got a connection on one or more of those levels, and yet I'm having the experience that, and you could be having it too, that I don't really see this going somewhere. I don't see this as partnership material for whatever reason. It's difficult sometimes to know what to do with that. If you withdraw completely, there's almost like you're not fully honoring that there is some kind of connection here. But if you pursue that connection, knowing that maybe both of you, or particularly over there, she's now going to start having more feelings because perhaps you're connecting romantically, but it doesn't, it's like a lovership because it can't really go somewhere more serious. And, loverships can be great as long as both people, that's sort of really what they're looking for. It's difficult when a lovership involves one person who actually wants more than that and then is liable to getting hurt, right? So I would invite him to say, I'm a big girl. I want to hear your truth. What do you see here? I notice you seem hesitant in that you're afraid of hurting me. What does that really mean? Am I picking that up right? Just kind of like give him permission to sort of blurt, basically, if you can hear it, so that you can actually get to his truth. Kathy, yeah, we just went through that. Hello, welcome. Thanks for being here. Curious on your thoughts about why we may not be consistent with self-love and deep inner work. At times I'm invested and other times not. Well, it's pretty hard. I mean, I don't think this has been the, I mean, maybe in certain communities of practice, but I don't think this has been what human beings have been doing for thousands of years of evolution, focusing on self-love. I think this is a relatively sort of postmodern possibility, so it's quite new culturally to even have this as, I mean, I don't even know what age I was before I even heard the word self-love. I was definitely an adult, and I could have been well into my 20s. And I could have also, the first several times I've heard it, sort of been like, I don't really get like why Louise Hay keeps talking about self-love. So yeah, that's just a bit of a at-large context. Doing inner work takes time and energy, just like anything, just like making dinner or building a business or building a relationship or anything that's meaningful in life typically takes work and can be tiring. One of the things that with inner work is it's not like you're punching the 9 to 5 and at 5 you've kind of done your day. It's like some of this stuff just comes up, right? You're kind of in the shower, you're going to sleep, you'll have a conflict with someone and you're kind of like, what's this bringing up for me? And so it sometimes the skill is also just to cut yourself a bit of slack and make sure that your inner critic and your disciplinarian isn't running the show. Now, if you're saying, well, there are certain things that I, kind of like yo-yo dieting, right, which we know doesn't really work. So there's a kind of consistency that would mean that my efforts aren't in vain. So maybe there's like a structural piece, like you want to be in a commitment orientation with someone else that helps keep you accountable, or you actually don't have the place to do your inner work. Like, you want to journal more, but actually you have some Post-it notes by your bed, but you don't really have a nice journal that encourages you to journal. So, there may be some of those things. If you're saying you significantly check out of your life so that you sort of become, I don't know, dissociated, distracted, avoidant, that probably is your inner work, right? So it kind of makes sense that you might be going a bit back and forth. But yeah, we're also, I mean, I sometimes just say this, just being a person is kind of hard, like even just the things of like, is it trash week? Is it recycling week? Is there food in the cupboard? Is there food in the fridge? Have I paid all my bills? Am I on top of my email? Have I gotten back to people? Am I keeping good agreements? Is the house clean? And does the car work? I mean, it sort of feels sometimes like an endless list of things that you've got to attend to and manage, none of which is about inner work, just day-to-dayness, I mean, you could bring qualities of presence and awareness to those things, but typically, when you're putting air in your car tires, that's kind of, it's life maintenance, and a lot of us have somewhat complex lives in the different things that we're putting attention on. So I like to try and at my better moments cut myself a bit of slack and just kind of say, yeah, being a human is multidimensional and some of it's really hard. So, kind of do your best. And then, we bring forth that evolution for generations to come. We do our little bit to kind of polish and perfect what we can in the time while we're here and live with our messiness and our contradictions and our frailties and our inconsistencies and our inner critics and the parts of us that are not yet fully integrated. And it's big territory. In certain spiritual traditions, my understanding is you wouldn't really be invited in them until you were at least in your 40s, perhaps later, and that you were basically set financially. Sort of meaning, if you want to turn to the inner life, you don't really have to worry so much about the external, because perhaps you've either not going to do it or you've done your most significant parenting. You're out of the game financially, so you don't have to worry about hustle or survival. And then you can turn to the kind of more contemplative life. But most people are taking this on even whilst we've, got financial pressures and bills to pay and no sign of retirement in sight and, blah, 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 taking care of people, mouths to feed, dinner on the table. You know what I'm saying? So it's good, I think, that we're doing this, because I think it is the evolution of the species to have more people doing inner work. I love that, all the power to us. But just doing that, it's not like someone said, "Oh, I just realized you're doing inner work. Don't you realize you go to HR and you tell them, and then HR just pays you every month so that you can go off and do your inner work." It's like, no, you still got your hold down your job. You're still paying your rent or mortgage. You're still taking care of, relatives, parents, children, your community, yourself, so it's just a lot. I don't know. Yeah. The modern 21st century globalized, sort of postmodernly disaggregated life. It's not like you're just doing the same role that your mother or father did in the community for generations upon generations, that your grandparents and great grandparents did. They were all smiths and you're a smith, and you learned that as an apprentice, and that was just going to be your life. You didn't think about leaving. You didn't think about training in something else, or you didn't think more than what you would be in a role as a wife or a mother. So it's like that sort of scripted traditional life. There's very few of us that I know really that are living that now, certainly in the West. And so you're in at least a self-authoring life where you get a whole set of choices about what you put your time and energy and attention on, how you try and make a living, whether you make a living full-time, part-time, if you have a side hustle, maybe you're a solopreneur, maybe you're gig economy, maybe you're doing fractional working. I mean, there's so many things that exist in the world of work that just 5 years ago didn't exist and we didn't even have words for, so just also being kind to us that evolution is sort of speeding up, and we're doing our best with that, but it's not easy. Okay, I'll get off that one. Thanks for the question. I date a man who feels like home. He asked me to marry. For 3 years, 2 weeks prior, he calls off. Says he wants to stay single. Then puts engaged on Facebook. Oh gosh, sends me picture. I'm still torn, working on other things to erase. No help though. Well, I'm sorry that he messed with your trust in that way. That doesn't sound like trustworthy behavior. And I get why that would be really devastating, that then he's calling off with you, saying he wants to stay single, and then is saying that he's engaged to someone else. I mean, I'm glad that you're not together. I'm not saying that it doesn't hurt and that you aren't disappointed and that that's messed with your sense of trust. But this wouldn't have been a good pick for you. And there's sometimes, without sugarcoating it too much, there sometimes can be a difficult truth that you can relate with a guy and he can say something like, I want to be single, which is a proxy for, I don't see us as, strange in this instance if he's asking you to marry him, but whether that's on the table or not, just, I want to stay single. There is something about that. It can be a communication to you, which can feel very difficult or really like rejecting, but there's also a freedom in it, because it's kind of like, okay, I want to find the guy that wants that with me. So for him, if it's actually true that he doesn't want to be with me, then it may be true that he wants to be with someone else, and of course that kind of, there's a reason we have the jealousy and those kind of feelings. We're really difficult and it can feel like betrayal. And in the bigger scheme of things, you kind of want the guy that just keeps choosing you for as long as that you're in that relationship, or maybe ongoing. So if actually he's not that, then the sooner that happens, generally, the better. Your development might be in the realm of not being seduced to guys' words and finding your center and sobriety, so that it's not easy for you to get hoodwinked, have the rug pulled, or feel lured into something that you're trustworthy because you notice in yourself what is worth trusting. Sometimes we outsource that, right? So we're sort of like over there with an untrustworthy guy. And of course, there's loads of untrustworthy guys. And as a guy, all of us are going to have untrustworthy parts at times. So let's just honor that and know that. But you need to insource your trust. And the more you insource your trust, the easier it is to notice what's trustworthy. If you're out to lunch, if you're super in your head, doubting, analyzing, fearful, or you're sort of naive, overly generous, giving a lot of the benefits of the doubts, taking everything that everyone says at face value, then you're more likely to be duped, so to speak. So sometimes there's work to become undupable, not cynical and skeptical, just true, centered, clear, where it's hard for you to get distorted. And what I'm asking is take aim at that. That's not necessarily the easiest path of development. I'm not saying it is. And of course, when we get our love fantasies activated and we start to get strong feelings, it's even harder to do. So much better that you have already a basis of not being dupeable before you start falling in love and then feeling the feels. So sorry you had that experience. I hope it can become your lotus flower. The lotus flower grows out of the mud, grows out of crappy experiences. You actually have something that's worth blossoming. Let's have a look here. Patricia, yes, spats over the phone due to scheduling and where to meet, or disagreements on meeting versus not meeting. So I'm curious about this. Sometimes it could just be that it's kind of not a good fit, and you sort of almost work that out because we can't even communicate to find a time to meet. So if we can't find a time to meet, we're probably not going to date, much less be in any kind of connection or relationship. Sometimes if this is a pattern that's happening more than once with different guys, it could be good to get really curious about what's going on there. I have sometimes found this is more of a pattern. This is maybe what I mentioned earlier, for people who are more easily feeling disrespected. This sometimes seems to go alongside that. Almost like if the guy doesn't give you enough lead time, or he doesn't approach the date in a certain way, you've got basically some ideas about how that should go. And it could be that it has to go that way because that's really what works for you. But then you might have some rigidity that if he's not really pattern matching with you, you're then, kind of at odds. So I'd get curious, what would it take to be easy to schedule with you? Is there any more flexibility that you can bring to that? Some women feel disrespected if a guy is not really making the effort to be like, okay, 1 week from now or 3 days from now, I would like to meet you for a drink or dinner or some kind of organized date that I've put some time and energy into. Some people are much more sort of spontaneous is fine. If you hit me up on a day and I can come out that evening and I want to, then I can be a yes to that. So I'm not making one of those right or wrong, just sort of saying, would it serve you to increase your options on the menu? Because if we're having a hard time scheduling, that doesn't make either of us wrong. Maybe I don't need to feel disrespected. Maybe we're just different. Maybe if I dropped certain ideas, that's fine. Or at least if I have those ideas, I'll reveal them. Like, here's what I'm wanting rather than here's what you should be doing, because those things are different. My inner work, I suppose, is poetry, painting, staying busy till exhausted. So that's interesting. I was kind of liking, I was like, oh, poetry, painting. I was actually listening earlier to some classical music from the soundtrack of Amelie. Do you remember that film? That used to be one of my favorite films. I guess it still is. I just haven't seen it in a long time. But then when you said staying busy till exhausted, I was like, what's that bit? Is that just what's happening? For your inner work, I would love you to be staying still until fresh. That's my challenge to you. Throw some dynamics when no contact isn't the best option in love triangles. I don't know. That's a complex question. I mean, if there were a situation where you all agreed that you wanted the triangle and you were going to do some kind of sort of open or polyamorous relating, that may be some kind of way forward. Sometimes there's these situations where people basically feel they can't leave their relationship, right? Like, we're raising kids, so I'm not going to leave the family until like the youngest kid is 18 and goes to college. But me and my partner no longer have like a romantic sort of love energy. We're more like managing the kids. And so we agree that we can free that up. And we actually, in openness and transparency, we both have the right to go and date intimately, maybe even be in an intimate relationship, just sort of so long as we keep paying the mortgage and maybe we don't tell the kids or some version of that. So, you know, if it's above board, maybe that's fine. But I would still think in the context that I've talked about it's more often going to be say your piece and truth, and then, you know, allow them to make their choice. You know, now you might have a little intuition that they are not going to leave because they're not willing to be with the consequences, like in a sense that you and they would be a more true connection than somehow what they're already in, but because they don't want to upset their partner or because they don't want to leave for financial reasons or something, that's not going to happen. So therefore you have to keep engaging in the triangle, because otherwise this truth that exists between you will never materialize. I don't know. Maybe there's something in there, but again, I would get curious why you would want to say yes to someone that's not willing to leave. You know, it might be really inconvenient to leave. It might be all sorts of things. It might have a timeline attached to it. It might have financial penalties. It might have consequences. But that, you know, life does have consequences, and we also have choices. You know, so why would you settle for not being chosen? I think is kind of where this comes back to, and that's your work probably around self-love and boundaries. So yeah. All right, 1 second. I'm just going to check because let's see what messages I got coming in here. Okay. All right, I'm going to get back to those shortly. All right, let me know if you have any more questions about coaching. If you've just joined us, we're chatting here, taking some questions, and we are now in the last hour and a half doing a bit of a countdown here. It's kind of like, I can remember doing this. I stayed up for the Brexit countdown. I wasn't a fan of Brexit, although I've started to try and be more open-minded about what the upsides could be. Anyway, that's probably a different conversation. But I remember, you know, what I guess they were like lowering the British flag from the EU flag, and it all was pretty anticlimactic in the end. There wasn't really that many people around. I guess Brexit had dragged on for a long time. It was kind of like year 4 or 5 at that point. But anyway, I will try and create a bit of fanfare for this countdown. All right, 100% Jack, 100% hardest thing. Yeah, I think some of these sort of love conundrums are kind of really hard, because, you know, it's like what we feel, what's sort of normal in society, what they're feeling, which may be different, how I'm impacted by that, how much I would go with what's true to my feelings, how much I go with what's sort of dutiful and honors, you know, existing connections or marriages or whatever's in place. It's a lot. It's not always that everything pulls in the same direction. Patricia says, thank you, Jack, for your answer. I can definitely be flexible in the ideas around meeting up with new dating partners. Awesome. Right on. Let me just scroll back here. MQ says, day-to-dayness takes over, and then I don't have the energy until after the work week for the weekend, but I want to make time for it more. Yeah, it's hard when you're in that cycle, that when you, I remember having that at times where it's like, I'm getting to the end of work, but I just now don't have the energy to really enjoy the post-work period. I know for me as well, when I've had like sinus issues and stuff going on, that can kind of be rough. So Kathy says, I'm going through same thing, 4 years. He couldn't make up his mind. for years, probably, he couldn't make up his mind, or maybe 4 specific years he couldn't make up his mind. And I told him I loved him. It's like riding a roller coaster. I don't ever recommend it. He will stay with his wife no matter what. Yes, that is quite often how these things seem to go. So just sort of having that awareness going in can be helpful, even though sometimes you will just get drawn into these situations. Sometimes, if you just look at it sort of without the morals and just look at it from a developmental lens, it's like sometimes these situations are created, I think, to draw you into your development, that maybe there's a part of you you're not expressing, or maybe it's to teach you, sometimes a relationship or connection comes along. I was actually reading a good post earlier about this. And then the decision about self-love is like, do you stay or do you go? Because sometimes then the actual self-love thing is, it's awoken something in you. Thank you, I've got it. And now the self-loving thing is to leave, because actually this isn't going anywhere, or this isn't a good person, or we're not good for each other. And that can be difficult. I know that from personal experience. That can be difficult. All right, we're talking about roller coasters here. Yep. Back and forth on the hardest thing. Can a vulnerable, aware narcissist really change? I really love it, because I'm like, wow, I think you think I'm smarter than I am. Well, I'm a fan of vulnerability, and I'm a fan of awareness, and I'm a fan of change. I'm less a fan of narcissism, but I'm also a fan of us owning our narcissism. So I'm less of a fan of it just being sort of limited to this person and that person is a narcissist, and I'm never willing to notice any ways that I might be narcissistic, even if it's not quite on the same level of spectrum. And I always think it's worth getting curious about your ability to diagnose narcissism. Like, are you as objective as you think, or is your own subjectivity actually involved there? Are your own places that you people please, or that you over attune, or that you don't hold your true boundaries? Like, all of that is sort of in there, right? And then the narcissist kind of takes advantage of that, or at least creates some kind of karmic contract with you, because they need someone that's got some challenges in self-love and boundaries in order that their narcissism has a place to nest, right? So I think much more that there's a dynamic going on than is perhaps commonly acknowledged when I hear people talking about this. But I think you're saying, if someone's a narcissist and they're sort of practicing their awareness and their vulnerability, can they change? Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm an expert in well, I'm not an expert in anything like the sort of clinical diagnostic side of narcissism. But I do have a general faith in people's power to change when it's a true desire and they bring in awareness. I think awareness can do miraculous things, particularly compounded over time. So, yeah, but then also there's sort of the other question, I'll say this because it sort of sounds stupid, and so it sort of blows up the piece of this that I'm talking about. Can you ever take dog poop and get it to smell nice? Maybe, but sort of why are we trying to do that? So if you genuinely believe this person, let's say your partner or would-be partner, is a narcissist, I think the self-love and boundaries thing comes in, and you say, oh, I get who you really are, or what the dynamic between us is going to be, and I'm a no. And that's actually the change that you want to focus on, rather than, can I take a narcissist and sort of like magician them into something else? That would be where my bets would be. All right, I'm going to have to wrap up this segment because I've got some people who are trying to get a hold of me here. So I'm going to just rattle through the last ones here, and then I may pop on a little bit later if I've got time. So if you're still around, check back. What do you miss most about living in England? There's a kind of collectivist sort of spirit that I experience in England that's different than I experience in the US. And there's something I appreciate about that. You know, it's sort of one way of talking about that, like, regardless of political party, pretty much everyone in England backs the NHS. You know, we complain about it. There's waiting lists, there's problems, but there's a sort of sense that this is a good thing, and it's good to look out for one another in that way. So I kind of appreciate that. I also appreciate that people say mate quite a lot. All right, mate. I like that. So when I go back there and I'm, I don't know, in a pub and someone's like, hey, mate, what do you want to drink? And which could be a literal mate of mine, but it could also just be like the bartender. There's something that just feels very kind of familiar and sort of matey about that kind of unpretentious sort of friendliness. I do like the land itself, but I've probably been more connected to land as a way of sort of being in the US, and just there's something about the vastness and the variety of this continent that I really appreciate. I really like London. I think London's a great city, and it's probably the city that, you know, it's the biggest city that I got to know and still know pretty well. I can kind of walk around it without getting too worried about where I am. And yeah, I just think it's got amazing diversity and architecture. And so I probably don't have another equivalent city, like a 10 million kind of city that I know in that way, and that I feel sort of safe in, you know, like the sort of safety that comes from just kind of knowing your orientations, knowing how the tube works. You know, I always joke when I kind of land in New York, the bus comes along and I go to pay and they say, no, you need a ticket. And so then I go off and get a ticket, and the next bus comes along and they say, oh no, you don't need a ticket, you need to pay. And I'm sort of like, okay, I just don't understand how this city works. I just have never lived there, you know. So yeah, thanks for the question. Okay, narcissist and borderline personality. Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on that. So I get if you're saying I am in a relationship with someone and this is now what I've discovered. But it sounds hard, you know. Jack, I appreciate your thoughts on they genuinely want to change. Probably we have had a twin flame and trauma bonded relationship off and on 3 years. Yeah. Yeah, got it. Sorry, it's a little bit back and forth conversation. All right. I'm going to hit pause there. I'm going to repost this. This is the last chance we're really closing the doors here. I have never done this. I actually wonder if I ever will do it. We'll see, I guess. But I've, taken a stand. I've actually just coming into my 9th year of coaching, and I have done what I call like a single payment discount. So it's slightly cheaper if you pay up front than pay monthly. And then I've changed it where actually everyone pays up front and we just do it that way. But I've never done an overall big, deep discount or even a marginal discount on my actual coaching fees. So this is it, making it happen here. And thank you for those of you that stepped in. And if you're on the fence, I encourage you to step in and let's see what we can do, some deeper work together. It's a real privilege to serve in this way. I really like that I get to coach, and I really believe in the power of coaching as well. So check it out, have a think, take action, actions where your life changes. You could do worse things and take a risk stepping into some coaching. And if you're around a little bit and I get through these queries, I might pop back on. Thanks for all the questions. It's nice being with you. Take care, guys. Oh, thanks, Kathy. I appreciate that. Super sticker. Awesome. Thank you so much. That's helpful. Yes. And every little helps, actually, because I'm literally right now in the midst of trying to close on my first home. And it's been quite a while coming. So, every little helps. I super appreciate it.